Fish Division by Grace, Jack, Lauren, and Juliet. In the ocean, there are many types of marine organisms. These organisms thrive, however, sometimes they encounter harmful events. These events could be natural, such as a storm and predation, or created by man, such as hunting. In one region of the Mississippi River lived a species of fish. These fish all lived in harmony with each other in a freshwater environment. However, one day, a fisherman began to hunt this species of fish. The fish's instincts told them to scramble away from the fisherman. As the school of fish was swimming away from the hunters, the school was split into two. As they continued to swim, one of the groups of fish found that they were swimming into a different type of environment, the saltwater-filled Gulf of Mexico. The other group of fish decided to stay in the freshwater environment of the Mississippi. The two separated schools never saw each other again. Over a period of time, the two different schools of fish were becoming distinguishably different due to their prolonged separation. For example, the fish that swam into the Gulf of Mexico adjusted its means of osmoregulation. Osmoregulation is how an organism controls the flow of water into and out of the body. The flow of water is regulated by the kidneys, gills, and body cells in fish. Since the fish were now in an environment of increased salt, the fish began to drink more amounts of salt water, produce lower amounts of urine, and secrete the salt from the water from its gills back into the environment. This is an example of the bottleneck effect, which is what happens when there is a decrease in gene pool diversity as a result of a low population of distinct individuals. The bottleneck effect is a type of genetic drift, which is the change in the frequency of a gene variant. This provides the group of speciation and eventual evolution. Many other adaptations transpired because the salt water was more concentrated than the fresh water, forcing the fish to adapt to their surroundings and produce a mutation that allowed them to camouflage with their new surroundings in order to prevent being hunted by predators. This adaptation increased the fitness of the fish in the Gulf of Mexico and allowed them to evade the fishermen. Now the two schools of fish had different means of osmoregulation and different coloring. One may not automatically assume that the two schools of fish had been closely related and originally members of the same species. These two populations of fish exhibited speciation. Speciation is when two or more different species develop out of an ancestral species. Speciation occurs due to a lack of genetic diversity and a change in environment. The fish we talked about earlier underwent speciation due to both of these factors. When the school of fish split into two, there was less genetic diversity in each population. This led to a higher prevalence of certain genetic mutations that would soon become characteristics of the new population and eventually the new species. Also, the fish that moved to the Gulf of Mexico were forced to adapt to the change in their environment, the increased salinity of the water. Thus, they needed to adjust their current means of osmoregulation in order to prevent dehydration and survive. 3 years later, the same group of hunters from the previous years were able to trap a group of fish from the first group who had remained in freshwater. Some of the hunters' friends had decided to go hunting in the saltwater and managed to capture some fish from the second group, who had evolved to survive in their recently new environment. Little did they know about the evolution of the species. The end.